Hi everyone! Today we're going to talk about plant life cycles. Have you ever wondered why some trees live so long, whereas little flowers often only live for 1 year? We're going to talk about how different plants have different plant life cycles today, and this will all make more sense. It will also help you decide what type of plants to buy and grow in your garden, and help you understand what to expect when you grow certain plants. Is it going to live for a long time or only for 1 year? Plant growth can be separated into two main types, growth and rest. Rest in plants is called dormancy, and this is what plants undergo during harsh winters or during a period of drought. Growth occurs when the environment is good for the plant growth. That means that the right temperature and rainfall are available for the plant. And the plant will usually flower in this growth time, the shoot length will get longer, and more leaves will be produced. Rest or dormancy, it happens again when it's cold or there's a drought period or inadequate light. It's characterized by slowed or stopped growth, and oftentimes the leaves of the plant will drop, or the entire above ground portion of that plant will die. Plants are classified according to how long they live. The four main types of plant classification are annual, biennial, perennial, and monocarp. Annual plants are usually very colorful and beautiful, but they only live for 1 year. The seeds germinate, and then the plant grows, the plant flowers, and then it dies. The only way for this plant to go to the next generation is to produce seeds so that they can grow the following year. If you want to grow annuals, you have to keep buying them every year. Some plants are grown as annuals even though they could actually live for longer. But because they're not adapted to growing in a cold area, cold regions grow these plants as if they are annuals. Some examples are latania, impatiens, and tomatoes. If they were grown in a warm climate, they would live for more than 1 year. Some examples of true annuals are pansies, broccoli, snapdragons, and cauliflower. These four like to grow in a cooler season, whereas summer or warm season annuals examples are cucumber, okra, and marigolds. A biennial completes its life cycle in 2 years. Let's go through an example. The plant will germinate, it will grow, it will enter dormancy, it will grow again, and then it will flower, and then it will die. In the first season, biennials invest a lot. They save money in carbohydrates so that early the next year, usually in the springtime, they can flower right away. An example of a biennial is a carrot. The carrot seed germinates, and then the taproot over the season is filled with carbohydrates produced in photosynthesis until you have a big, lush carrot. The above-brown portion of the carrot then dies, and if left without being picked, is overwintered, and then early in the spring, all of the stored energy is used to produce these flowers. These are carrot flowers. We usually grow carrots as an annual, however, so that the taproot is as large as possible when we harvest it. But if it was left for another year, it would produce flowers. Another example of a crop that is harvested prior to entering the winter dormancy is cabbage. So in summary, a biennial is grown from seed, produces leaves in rosette form for 1 season, becomes dormant during the winter, resumes growth in the spring, produces a vertical flower stalk, sometimes called a bolt, and then it dies. Other examples are sweet williams, parsley, and lettuce. A perennial lives for more than 2 growing seasons. Think of the trees that grow for many years, or shrubs, or some flowers. The plant germinates, it grows, it flowers, it enters dormancy. The next year it grows, flowers, and enters dormancy. This repeated cycle can continue for many years. Most of the trees, shrubs, ground covers, and herbaceous flowers and grasses that you know are perennials. Some flower examples are daylilies and irises. They grow back from the roots each spring. These are a great investment for your yard since you will not have to keep purchasing these plants. Perennials typically reproduce by growing new plants from the mother plant, vegetatively, so they produce a lot of clones. Sometimes you can ask your neighbor if they have a lot of perennial, if they're willing to share them with you, since they spread or produce more vegetative clones every year. They can also reproduce by seed. Monocarps is our last example. A monocarp can live for many years, but will flower only once in its lifetime, and right after it flowers, it dies. Monocarp plants are germinated, they grow, and they enter dormancy. They continue in this cycle between dormancy and growth for a few years, up to many years, and then they flower. After they produce a flower, they die. Some examples of monocarp plants are century plants. This is a century plant that I took a picture of in Sedona, Arizona, USA. This is an immature one. On the same hike, I found one that had just flowered but had already entered death. When they're flowering, they look like a giant asparagus. Next, we're going to cover tree classification. Trees are classified based on their leaf retention. Remember, most trees are perennial plants, so they live for many years. Deciduous trees are perennial plants that shed their leaves every year during the fall and winter time. They enter a dormancy or a time of rest. Evergreen plants are perennial plants that retain their leaves for 2 or more years. That means that they do not shed their leaves every year. Semi-evergreen plants have their leaves most of the year. These perennial plants shed their leaves when the new leaves are emerging in the spring. So it almost seems like they never lose their leaves because they're replaced so fast. They're almost evergreen. Some example of deciduous plants, the ones that lose their leaves in the fall and become dormant, are pecan, oaks, maple, and pear. Some evergreen examples are pine, holly, juniper, spruce, and cedar. This is a picture of a holly plant. An example of a semi-evergreen plant is a live oak. This is a picture of the gigantic live oak tree at Texas A&M campus. This is called the century tree. Semi-evergreen trees shed their leaves when the new leaves are emerging in the spring. Now we're going to cover some other horticulture classification. You might use these words when you're talking about purchasing a plant. When someone says this is a herbaceous plant, that's a fancy way to say this is a non-woody plant, and it's usually short-lived. You won't expect herbaceous plant to have a woody stem. On the other hand, woody plants have a more dense, sturdy tissue and tend to be longer-lived. Here are some examples of herbaceous annuals. Remember, annuals die back completely at the end of the growing season, and they can come back only in the form of a seed. Some examples are coleus. Coleus come in lots of different colors. They are very common and easy to grow herbaceous annual. Other examples are geraniums, begonias, impatiens, petunias, and verbena. Now for herbaceous biennials. Remember, they die back at the ground at the end of the first growing season and then emerge in the spring the second year, produce a flower, and then die. Some examples of herbaceous biennials are bluebonnets, ragwort, parsnip, carrots, and foxglove. Now let's talk more about herbaceous perennials. These are great investments because they keep growing year after year if you plant them in your yard. The stem in the fall dies, but part of the plant survives under the ground and emerges again in the spring to produce growth and flowers yet again. This is a beautiful picture of a peony, which is a herbaceous perennial. Other examples are hostas, mint, ferns, and many grasses. Vines are plants that climb or twine around other plants. Some examples are morning glory, trumpet vines, black-eyed Susans, cucumber, and clematis as pictured here. Lianas are woody climbing plants, so vines that are woody. Some examples are grapevine, poison ivy, wood trumpet vine, and Virginia creeper. Herbs are another classification of plants that we enjoy eating. Examples are peppermint, chives, basil, cilantro, spearmint, and oregano. These are great things to grow in your garden because you can save money on buying groceries. Here's some more classification for woody plants. We have shrubs, which are woody plants low in stature that are short and that are self-supporting, having several upright stems. Trees are woody plants tall in stature, having a single upright central leader stem, or what we call trunk of a tree. Deciduous trees lose their leaves in the fall, whereas evergreen trees retain their leaves. This category was previously discussed. Today we covered many different terms to describe different plants that you would find in your garden or in the landscapes around you. Now you have some terms to refer to specific plants, even if you don't know their exact name. Understanding the life cycles of plants will help you pick the right plants for your garden and your situation. I hope you have a great day. Next time we're going to cover more about plant life cycles.